So this assignment is something called high contrast drawing with black ink. What we're going to try to do is look at the object that we're drawing, and unlike all the nuances, all the gradations of grays and lights and darks that we've done in previous drawings, we're going to reduce it to black and white with the ink. Now the reason I'm doing this strange sort of thing is that you don't have heavier watercolor paper, which I was going to give you face-to-face during our regular sessions of the class. So this is a way to use the paper that you have, which will not be affected too much by the straight ink. It's not a wash drawing. It's not a drawing that's like watercolor with a lot of water mixed in, which is going to simply pucker the painting, the drawing that you have in your sketch pad. But the black ink holds up better with the drawing pad that you have. So that means a little bit of perceptual simplification that you're going to do with the subject that you have in at hand. Now this cup here, good old coffee cup from the cupboard, I've done quickly with black and white, and you also have your pen, the sort of black ready-made Techno pen that you have in your kit. So it's going to be brush, ink, paper, and pen. All right. So you have to think about the subject that you're doing as being almost reduced to, in fact, being reduced to black and white. If you squint your eyes, if you sort of half close your eyes as you're looking at the subject, you simplify things. You don't see much of the nuance of reflections or gradations of shadows. What you have to do in this kind of drawing is see just the simple black and white that might describe the object itself, and that would be both within the object and any kind of cast shadow that's on the surface that's sitting on. And I've put in a kind of fake table edge here with this black foam core that allows us to have the edge of the object into the space, which will give us some nuance of contrast between the object and space itself. Okay, another object I did for a test drawing here was this butternut squash, whereby I had its form in the middle of the paper. And what we'll do, I'll demonstrate in a minute, but what we'll do is we'll do a pencil contour drawing. And what'll make it easier for you is that your thin graphite woodless pencils can actually simply color in the darkness where the ink is going. You're able to erase that pencil line afterwards. But if you can draw the contours, which I'll do in a minute, and fill in where you see the shadows being, you'll have the big basic contrast of black and white. Now notice that there are all sorts of nuances here between the highlight of this side and the darkness of this. You're almost like a 1960s rock poster where you're forcing a kind of high contrast silkscreen value change between the darkest and the lightest. But it's somehow, because you're being attuned to what the shape is and where the darknesses are, with the most simple means, you're still coming up with something that should be three-dimensional, even though it's not nuanced. So what I'm going to do now is to start from scratch on another subject. I'll come back to the cup, because it's one I've had practice on quite frankly. And as I've done this one, this is a sort of completed one, but I'll try one from scratch to take you through the steps of first of all drawing the thing. Okay, what you need to do is cut down your paper a little bit. You might do it in half, okay, so that you're not dealing with the whole 14 by 16, I believe it is. This one's a little messed up, but you can see what I'm trying to do here. And with this graphite pencil, I'm just going to do the best I can to do the shape of this thing. You can be a little bit more complicated and ambitious than my particular shapes. Okay, you could, as far as subjects are concerned, things like hats you'll have more space to work in than I have right now, okay? And you can do things like baseball hats, shoes. I have a number of things listed in the text that I've given you in the email that I'm sending you, that I've sent you here, as well as this video. So I'm going to do the best I can to get this right, which I'm having trouble with, so that we get a sense of the actual shape of the thing. Okay, all right. So it comes down like this and like this. Goes out like that, and kind of, okay, like that. And then also, as we've always done through the semester, if you can draw the cast shadow, it's a complicated one here, but I'm going to simplify it. Cast shadow, it goes up perhaps this high. And because I want some kind of contrast up the top, I don't quite have it aligned right now, but I'm going to bring down that black foam core thing to the top of the cup so that there's an excuse to give you a contour. Because one of the things about this kind of drawing is that you're often left with no way to see the contour, but a kind of line or a kind of dark value that's up against that contour. So I've got what seems to be the cast shadow here. All right, there's no reason why you can't fill that in with your pencil, because it's going to be gone over with ink. Okay, and in here, the interior of the cup has its shadow, you know, up against the edge that's here. Okay, so you're actually carving out a space with just black and white, and you're bringing this down here. You're probably not seeing it exactly as I'm seeing it here, but you get the point of the big basic ways of doing this. So I've got big shadow here that's going to be black, big shadow here that's going to be black, and I guess in between the ring of the handle, it would be black as well. All right. So you've got your brush. The one brush is a number 4, which is a little bit large. So I would make perhaps your drawings, or your images, a little bit larger than mine. It will allow you to manipulate the brush a little bit more than I will. I've got some cheating smaller brushes here to use as well. And again, you can do contours that are white against white with your pen. This isn't quite the pen you have, but you know the pen that you have. I'm going to begin to put in the dark shadows. And with your ink bottle, this is a acrylic ink. Yours is a regular India ink, which is just fine. I would first shake the bottle, okay? If they've been on the shelf for a long time and been in your portfolio or stored somewhere, the sediment, the pigment of the ink is likely to separate from the medium liquid. So if you just do a couple of shakes, it makes the black pigment evenly distributed in the bottle. And with your brush itself, if you've probably not used the brush unless you use them for the mark collages at the beginning of the semester. You know, take that brush and dip it in water, cleaner water than I have right now. Pat it somewhat dry, but not completely dry. So it's moist. So it's moist, because that allows you to sort of get the brush into a kind of rounded point. If you twist it a little bit on a paper towel or on a surface that doesn't mind getting messed up, you've got a sharper kind of brush to deal with. And I'm going to just put in the brush to the ink bottle. Try not to load it up too much. I mean, it's going to be the kind of thing you have to experiment with. And I'm just rubbing off excess ink at the edge of the bottle. And go slow. Go slow, all right? I might experiment with this particular shadow in here first, all right? Now I'm really cheating because I've chosen really simplified things to do, so the chances of my making mistakes in the demonstration are lessened somewhat. I'm sure I'll make mistakes, but nonetheless, it's a little bit smoother. You don't have to use as perfect and simple a set of subjects as I'm doing right now. And you're welcome to move the thing around. You know, unlike your easels and your drawing board, sometimes hard to twist and turn the ink. And it's obviously because you're using ink that's liquid. With your drawing board or your pad, keep the paper flat. You don't want to put it at a too angled orientation, because you'll have ink running down the board and down the paper into your lap. So I'm going to put what seems to be a little bit here. It's really about perception and about simplifying things. It's really about trying to get a punchy graphic design simplification of what you're drawing, as opposed to what you all have done pretty well through the semester. You know, a kind of detailed, multi-valued darkness, lightness rendering of things. So this sort of forces you to be a minimalist, forces you to be one who sees a lot of complexity and translates it into, if I can do this correctly here, so it's a bit of a challenge, like that, and like this. Got some ink underneath there. And I guess we'll just go here. You might bring this shadow, well, I'm going to bring this shadow a little bit under the cup so it seems to be sitting on the table. I'll fix that with the pen later. The pen can be a kind of patchwork instrument for cleaning up mistakes. So something like that. And then just a little bit of a shadow there. So now notice that there's not much of a contrast up here, all right? And like many of your graphite drawings through the semester, if you put a space in back, okay, you've got something that gives you a contrast to what would be either just almost a non-existent pencil line, or a nothingness, you know, white on white. I'm going to do that and try to do this a little bit. And it's up to you. You don't have to make a huge space in back, but you're welcome to fill the whole thing. You probably got enough ink, but even a kind of gestural simplicity to the space in back will frame it. See how this frames this now and gives you something of a more believable contour. And I might finish it off with the pen I've talked about. You know, I see a little rim here, so I'm going to try to, without getting my pen in the ink, try to do a little rim here. And don't overdo the outlines. Just put them in minimally, and put them in where there's really going to be no other definition between the white of the page and the actual contour of the cup. And here's where I say you can get a little bit more detailed with the pen to simplify and make more subtle the shadows we were talking about down below. Okay, now there might be another ring in here that would be the birth of the cup. Okay, so what happens in in things like this. Here's my first one. This is probably maybe a little bit better than this one. In my first one, notice that this happens here. My shadow in this one went to the edge of my imaginary table. In the gourd here, which stands up, into the black space, if I had simply left this darker, brutal shadow going all the way up into the space, there'd be nothingness here. You'd have no delineation between the actual contour and the space itself. So what I've done here and here, where black meets black, if you want some kind of contour, is to leave the most minimal, or just whatever you're capable of in terms of leaving something of a thin line. This one here is a bit of a rough one. And one of the things that you can do if you have a line between black and black to separate shadow and space is to take an X-Acto knife. Okay, this should be reasonably dry, but if you take an X-Acto knife, I'll try to do this so people can see, and should probably be a little bit drier than I have it now, but if you, long story short, pretend you've got a scratch board. Let's hope this works. Yeah. Okay. It needs to be drier, but knife sharper. But poor workman who blames his tools. But by and large, if you can do it more smoothly than I, you've got a reprieve if you've gone over the contour that you're trying to achieve with black and black. So you can sort of recapture that edge. There I go. Capture that edge by scratching through the ink and bringing back that contour. So it's a not complicated. It's a challenge in terms of trying to compress the reality you see in front of you into just black and white. And I'm going to put another one here. So here's the same problem: white on white, black on black. And if you find that you've done too much of this stuff, that's easily erased. Probably, I don't have a kneaded eraser with me right now. I have the white eraser, but with a kneaded eraser, it'd probably be easy to just mop that up. The white eraser might work, but it will probably mar the ink if it's somewhat wet, because I've just done this. So that's our mission for the final assignment, which would be due next week. I wish we had the material and the paper to do the wash drawings, which can be quite beautiful. But nonetheless, this gives you an inkling of what no pun intended, an experience in the ink that is really a kind of border between painting and drawing. So we're really heading towards a painting experience with this liquid medium.